With Tempo Storm's victory, taking the title at CVOP Season 9 LAN Finals, this is a team we really have to take note of. They'd already broken onto the scene previously. We'd seen some upset results from them. We'd seen some positive online results from them. But now they're a team who legitimately you have to consider like a top 10 team, a team that's becoming more and more dangerous and are showing signs of evolution. So let's take the pulse of them. Let's look at who they are as a team. First of all, some history. Previously, the lineup that's involved now, the core of it was the Games Academy team. Now, what people don't know is that back in 2014, two of the members of this team, so we're talking about Lucas 1 and N1, and at the time FNX, who would go on to be one of the members of the team later as Games Academy, they were part of a 2014 lineup, which went on to become Kaboom, and obviously eventually fractured to become what is now Luminosity, and then the other players, FNX, N1, Lucas 1, went over to become what became Games Academy. So in 2015, Games Academy starts going to LANs in sort of the last 4 or 5 months. They go to the Win Out Championship LAN, which is only NA teams and Games Academy and Luminosity. And that was when they were able to finish 4th. They lost to CLG and they lost to 3SUP, which is essentially the core that is now Splice. They then went to the RGN Pro Series, which was this was like a really stacked NA LAN. And they finished top 6 there, but they lost to C9, but took a map off them. And they lost to Luminosity, their sister Brazilian team, took a map from them as well. Towards the end of the year, a couple of days before DreamHack Winter, which was the Faceit Stage 3 finals, they lost FNX, long-time veteran from the 1.6 days, who won the WC MIBR. And they lost Taco, and they lost Zeus, their coach, over to Luminosity. And we all know what happened to Luminosity then. They came second at that event. They eventually became one of the best teams in the world, and they've now won the last major. What happened instead was Bolts got kicked out of Luminosity, and so Games Academy took him in. Then they got Phelps from elsewhere in the Brazilian team, and they got Peacemaker as their coach and in-game leader. They were able in early 2015 to qualify for both IEM 10 Katowice, which is the World Championship of the 10th season of IEM, and DreamHack Malmö. I went to the major qualifier. Unfortunately, they failed to qualify there. They were in the group that had, I think it was the group that had Selfless and, well, at the time they were enemy. Well, they would be Selfless, I think. I think they were in the group that had them and Flipside. Is that correct, though? And they were also in the group that had G2, so maybe I got that slightly wrong there. Let me think. Whatever. They were in the group that had G2. The Shocks and all those guys. Let me think. They managed to they went to IEM Katowice, because obviously they won't go to the major. They finished top 6 there. They got out of their group. They had some nice upset wins in the group. In the playoffs, they had to play Na'Vi, who was obviously fantastic and has made the finals in nearly every tournament this year, except that one, interestingly. They took Na'Vi to 3 games. It was really exciting. This is the first tournament where Guardian had his hand injury. They were close to making the semis to play Luminosity to the sister team. They were unable to. Na'Vi went through. So top 6 at a big tournament. They went to DreamHack Malmö, because obviously they had to skip the major because they didn't qualify, where Luminosity were able to win. DreamHack Malmö, they were able to upset Envious in the group stage. They lost to Virtus.pro and Mirage. They upset Envious in a super close 16-14 game on Cobblestone, where Envious did this huge comeback on the T side, but eventually a nice read on CT side allowed this team to get the upset over Envious on one of Envious's best maps. But they then had to go, after losing to VP, and play against Envious in the decider, which was a best of 3 for the spot in the playoffs. And at this point in time, the team had never won a best of 3 over a top 10 ranked team, and they were unable to here. Envious actually reasonably convincingly beat them 2-0 in maps, even though the maps were maps actually that this team was good on. These should be maps they should have liked to play on. I think it was Dust 2 in Inferno, in fact. Let me think, can that even be right? Yeah, I think it was in Dust 2 Inferno. Then they came to CVOP Season 9 now. Obviously, it wasn't that stacked a LAN as IEM and as DreamHack Malmö. The best teams here were Virtus.pro, there were Hellraisers, there were Dignitas, and Tempo Storm. Tempo Storm were right up there. I think I would put them, going to the tournament, I would have had them 3rd or 4th in terms of likelihood of winning, probably 3rd, because I had Virtus.pro first, because they have the tenure, they have the map pool, it's best of 5 later on in the tournaments. Dignitas, because they have the upset potential, they have hot young players, they have a good tactical style. Then I had Tempo Storm because they had the upset potential. They'd shown some things on LAN. They had some skilled players. They're very explosive. And then I had Hellraisers because they had adding in Bondic to the Oscar mix, who's very strong. And they had a nice little mix of teams and seemed to be on the rise. But they were able to win this tournament. Now, here's the thing about the team. In watching this tournament, it really gave me a lot to think about in terms of the team, because I've watched all the upset wins, and it's been quite unconvincing. Like, some of the wins look amazing, and then there's some that, like, the losses are kind of like a bit iffy, and then the map pool's all over the place. From watching this tournament and watching it very closely and seeing all the games that this team played, I think I've got a good sense for what all the players are like in this team. So we'll start with N1. And this actually highlights the problem with Tempo Storm, and why I feel like they got overrated up to this point in time, and why people actually were giving them too much hype prior to this tournament and the last sort of 2 tournaments where they've started to gradually show more of an up curve than they had before. So N1 was built due to what he did in Games Academy when he was at the RGN Pro Series, where he had a couple of crazy maps, particularly a Dust 2 one, where he had like a 4K or 5K with the AWP, and people were like, oh my god, his shooting speed, his firing speed is so fast. People overrated him, because what they said was, he might be like right up there with Cold Zeras, with the best Brazilian player. He's the star player of this team. He's one of the best AWPers in the world. He could be as good as Guardian and those guys. This is where he was overrated. This guy is not an amazing AWPer, but he's an AWPer that hits amazing shots. And if you understand the difference between those two positions, you will understand N1. Because he's someone who can hit some of the craziest shots, flick shots, very fast pre-fire style shots in all of CSGO. Might have the fastest firing speed in that particular sense, like a pre-fired instant shot. But he's not a very consistent AWPer. He's not the Guardian style of AWPer you put on like a corner or an angle, and then he's just going to hit 1, 2, 3 people just running by in standard fashion and be very like that Skadoodle, like Guardians, that JDM style lockdown CTR. Instead, he's the guy where he's going to be amazing if he peeks out onto a spot, or he takes it with one quick shot and then moves back and then takes another and spams a couple of shots. He's going to hit a couple of crazy, super fast, super good shots, but his accuracy also isn't as good on those shots as a Guardian. For me, what's interesting is I think the reason he was a counter to Guardian when he was at Katowice, where he had a really good performance at Katowice overall, was Guardian, first of all, had the hand injury. You could see it limited him a little bit. And also, Guardian is more the stable, static AWPer who you know the position he's going to be in, but he's quite fast himself and he knows all the angles. So this guy, almost pre-firing with the AWP, was how he was able to kind of get the jump on Guardian, and Guardian hadn't adapted to playing against him. The problem is, I don't see N1 as a carry player. He'll have games where he has 4, 5, 6 shots, and you'll be like, wow, this guy's amazing. Then you look at the scoreboard, he'll have like 16 kills for the half. He's not this sick carry player. He's very rarely going to totally take over the game. Admittedly, he had a very good game on Cobblestone in the final. To me, the analogues for him, first of all, I'll give credit to YNK, Yanko. He gave me a good analogue in one sense, that he's more like Makaleli when Makaleli was in NIP in late 2014, early 2015. He's not the star player. He's best if he's sort of your third star, and he's the hybrid one between. You've got 2 consistent stars above him, and he's the guy where you just give him the AWP, and he's going to get impact kills. He's going to get big kills, going to get crazy kills, fast kills, and occasionally he'll take over a round or a half, but he's not going to be a consistent carry in the team. Likewise, an analog I'd bring up is JW in 2015 Fnatic, where likewise you had Olofmeister was the superstar, you had Crumbs was the consistent player, and then you had JW in there over the most of the year when he was AWPing, at least for the first half, where he's going to hit those crazy shots, he's going to be that wild card, but if he dies it doesn't matter, you've got the consistent player there to make it work. And here's what's interesting, now we're going to fit some of the other players in, and you're going to see how the JW analogy makes a lot of sense. So for me, the best player in this team is Boltz, and he's the guy from Luminosity, and he has improved a lot since Luminosity. I don't know if it's that we're using him in different roles, or he just didn't feel as confident there, or was comfortable, but he has become a lot better in this team, and now, at this tournament, he really hit his peak. He really hit a new level of consistency in play. He's the best player in this team in terms of performance, what he does every single map. He's extremely stable. He strikes me as like the Crims of Brazil. He's the guy where he's going to put out a lot of damage. He's not going to take as much damage. He's going to position well. He's going to get 1 or 2 kills with consistency. This is just a fantastic guy. He's not going to get the crazy highlight kills. He's just going to grind the opponents down. So you put him in the mix there, you've got stability in your team. That's why I see him as like the Crims of the team. So N1's the JW of the team. Boltz is the Crims of the team as a result. Very stable, and when you consider that at this tournament, CEVO Season 9, he was the in-game leader as well. What a phenomenal player. This is what an all-round player. That's why he was my MVP of the tournament. Then we've got Phelps. Now, in terms of pure skill, yes, N1 has this very extreme skill, very fast firing speed. I think in terms of pure skill, Phelps is the most skilled player in this team. And it's discovering Phelps and being able to put him in a position where now he's having maps where he'll drop 30 kills, 25 plus kills, have huge ADR, 120 ADR. When he has the big carry games, his performance combined with Bolt's stability is just going to win you games. Those are the maps near Tempo Storm. It feels like are nearly always going to win, or it's going to be a very close loss at worst. This is a guy who's a big game player, it feels like. And I feel like if they want to develop and they want to become a top 6, top 5 level team, potentially become an elite level team in the world, the development of Phelps, who has been getting better and better LAN to LAN, if he can develop to become more consistent with being that big fragger and become like the Olafmeister of the team, to go with Bolts' Crims and N1's JW, that's when this team will become a top 5, top 6 team. If that happens. That's a big if still, but he is a very skilled player. At the moment, not the best player, because Bolts is just more consistent. He doesn't have as much ups and downs. Phelps certainly a very skilled player. So one of the reasons why you can look at this team already, before I go into the last player, Showtime. Oh, well, it's two more, Showtime and Lucas One. One of the reasons why you can already see why this is a very different team to the Games Academy before, which people hyped, is because that team didn't have Phelps and it didn't have Bolts in it. Also didn't have Peacemaker as the in-game leader for a while, and the coach. Now Phelps has taken over the in-game leader role. Then we're going to talk about Showtime. Now, Showtime had some good games where he was like a secondary AWPer, and he had a couple of good maps. And what's weird is, going into, I think it was the semi-finals, he was actually top 5 of the event in stats in one particular sense. I can't remember what it was that was the rating that put him in the top 5. But this guy had a couple of appalling maps in the semi. I think it was the maps that VP won. And he had some really bad games in the final. He almost single-handedly lost, I think it was the Dust 2 game. Let me think, was it the Dust 2? I think it was the Dust 2 game that he had like 8 kills throughout regulation and almost lost it if Bolts hadn't been a monster and carried them in overtime. I think overall, I have to say this, I don't think this guy is a good player. I think he's not a very skilled player. I think he's had a lot of problems in terms of performance. At the moment, he strikes me as when Taco first joined up with Luminosity and he was having all those bad games. Not only is he not getting enough frags and not having enough impact, but he dies way too much. He dies an insane amount. I think he dies something like 0.7 times 0.7 deaths per round or something crazy. Some really high number of deaths per round with not that much fragging overall. So whereas someone like Bolts, yeah, they don't have like 0.8 FPR usually, but they'll have like a 0.6 or 0.7 FPR frags per round, and then their deaths per round will be way lower. A player like Showtime is dying way too much. So he's actually, at the moment, I feel like he's one of the liabilities on the team who needs to shore it up or have different positions or learn how to just play a bit safer. Might not have to get more kills, but just don't give up deaths as easily. Stay alive more. Be like more like a Markelov on flip side to that degree. Finally, you got Lucas One, and even though he's the twin brother of N1, he doesn't really seem to have any of the skills. Like, for me, I guess I've said Showtime's the worst because he's the bigger liability, but to me, Lucas One's the one who's just, it's meh, it's whatever. He's just a player in the team. I don't see much from him. Just seems to hang around, just seems to be okay. Not much to say, positive or negative. Just it seems like the team to me is more about Bolts, Phelps, and N1, and then Showtime not shit in the bed. So that's the team overall. And you can see this is why this team's very different from the Games Academy, and why you can't just look at the team and go, I always said they were amazing and they always were top 5. They weren't. You can see this development. You can see when they added in Bolts and Phelps, how it changed the team. You can see how bringing in Peacemaker changed the team. Now they've changed the team by making Bolts the in-game leader, and you've seen gradual development. So one of the issues they have right now, it's always been an issue, but it's really an issue right now when all the rest of the pieces are falling into place. They have huge issues closing. These are the guys where if they win around a half 12-3, you know the opponent's getting to at least 8 or 9 rounds before it ends. If they even get back into a game and it's a 13-13, 14-14, they're really shaky at closing the game out. They're not that clutch in these scenarios. They have a really weird map pool. When you consider how many upsets they've had and across a bunch of different maps, it's crazy how few really strong maps they have. The only really strong map they have that's like a true home map is Cobblestone. On that map, they are really good. This is a legit home map. Beyond that, there is no really good map. Like, they are good on Dust 2. But they've been beaten on it, and they still can sometimes be a little bit weird on it. But they're good on that, okay? They're good on Dust 2. They're good on Mirage. But again, they can lose on it. They can lose to VP. They can lose to a bunch of... I think they lost to SK on that. This is a map that can really be up and down for them. But let's say they're good on that. So they've got 3 maps I'd say they're good on. Then they've got 2 maps that they are obviously shaky on. Even though Inferno has great stats for them, they haven't had that many games on LAN that were big wins, and definitely not against top opponents. So I find Inferno quite shaky for them. Especially the way they got wrecked by VP. Then you go to Cash. This is really shaky. It was back and forth to Dignitas. With VP, it was obviously really up and down. This is a map that's not good for them. Then you go to the 2 of the customs, Train and Overpass. They don't like Train. They haven't been good on it, even though they were able, obviously, to get wins on it at times against, admittedly, not sick teams. Let me think, though. Did they actually beat Virtus Pro on that map? I think they did, actually. So I'll give them that one. That was the legit win. That's maybe showing some signs they can start to figure it out. They ban Overpass. They don't really play that. We haven't seen them play it much, and so that's out of the equation. So you see, at the moment, the map pool is too rocky. When you've got a map pool like this, it's going to be hard to win best of 3s over top 10 ranked opponents, and definitely hard to make it deep in tournaments as a result, because playoffs from the quarterfinals or semis onwards are going to be series play. And now we can see why in the past they didn't win series. It was only this tournament where they started getting series. Before they were a single map upset team, like the old school Luminosity. So, one of the problems of their closing issues is it feels like they often need to be the team that gets the early leads because they're good front runners. Like when they're going ahead, they'll blast the lead out. But then when it gets to the tense part, when they're at 12, 13 rounds, that's when they have problems closing. They let the enemy close the gap a little bit. They lost a lot of close games. The problem with losing a lot of close games is you're not going to be an elite team if you do it. You're not going to get through big series if you do it. And you're not going to win tournaments, even though they did it on this occasion at a lesser tournament. Problem with lots of close losses, as Luminosity found out until they won the major, is in these scenarios, it's like an inch is as good as a mile in losses. It doesn't matter if you lose by 10 rounds or 2. You're still losing, and you're losing for a reason, and it's consistently happening. It's something you've got to figure out, as well as something the opponent's doing. Now, when I think of this team, I don't count the team when it was Games Academy, because, first of all, they had FNX back then, who's now a Luminosity player, and it was a good clutch player. They didn't have Phelps and Bolts, who to me are the two best players in the team. They also had a totally different coach. Then they got to the major qualifier. They lost to G2, and I think it was Flipside. Now, people talk mad shit on that G2 team. Yeah, they still beat this team on supposedly one of their better maps. Actually, I'll just double check if they did actually play Flipside. I don't want to talk out my house on that, but I'm pretty sure they did play Flipside, right? Wasn't that on? Let me have a look. I'll just have a quick look at this because I don't want to get this wrong. I may as well get it right because it'll be kind of weird if I've mistaken that. I'm incredibly tired from traveling home, but I'm pretty sure they did play them. So let's just quickly check. Or let's wait for everything to fucking load the one time I need something to load. Right, here we go. So we've got Columbus qualify. Yeah, they did play. They played the best of 3 against Flipside. It was the Sulphur Screw. I did remember it all right. And they lost 16-5 on Cash, and they lost 16-5 on Train. It was a really bad game for them. And worst of all, N1 got massively out-AWPed by World Edit, who's a good AWPer, but he's certainly not a world-class AWPer, and he has a lot of issues himself against the world-class AWPers. And so that immediately showed us there, yes, they've done great online to qualify for IEM during Malmo, but let's see how they learn online, and let's see how their new lineup gets shit together online. IEM Katowice, they had good best of 1s, but they didn't win any best of 3 series. Close loss to Navi. Guardian did have issues, but N1 had a big performance. Phelps and Bolts still, but Bolts starting to get stable. Phelps still kind of developing within the team. DreamHack Malmo, they upset Envy. They lose the best of 3 to Envy. Starting to still go a little bit better, but some players had underperformances there. Gfinity, they got the first best of 3 win over a top 10 team. Dignitas, they got the first best of 5 win over a top 10 team. Virtus Pro, Phelps had a big tournament. Bolts had a very good tournament. N1 had some maps that were good. So where are they right now? I mean, if you look in the description box below, I'll post my top 10 rankings when I update them. I haven't written them yet, but I'm pretty certain they're going to be top 10. They're one of the most exciting teams to watch, especially because the map pool's so shaky, but they can have such strong performances on them, and they can upset on maps that aren't necessarily their best maps. For me, in terms of exciting upset teams, because they're still an upset team, they go along with Dignitas, at least for the last few months. Envious, because Envious aren't world-class right now, but they can upset people in one map. Godsend, obviously, has just come onto the scene, and Mouse is there because they have single map upset potential over a lot of teams, thanks to Nico. I do think this team, if they continue at this pace or continue to improve, they should make the next major. They probably should have been at the last one, but it was the first big LAN with this lineup, and they kind of choked a little bit. It's a real shame they aren't in the E-League, but there's more to that than E-League not inviting them. Unfortunately, I can't say a lot right now. These are the sorts of things that I'd have to come out through investigative journalism, but there's some fuckery as to why they're not in E-League, and some of it sounds like it's their fault to some degree. And as a team, at the moment, they still remind me of Luminosity. When they got Cold Zera, but before they got FNX and Taco and Zeus and transformed and became this team. To me, they're like Luminosity there if it had continued without getting FNX and Taco in and had learned to gradually begin to win the best of 3s, just like they did over Titan just before that, changed the lineup, but hadn't got the boost of getting the new players and suddenly become super good and had to keep figuring it out gradually on a gradual trajectory. So I think that's where they still are. Certainly exciting though, and if they can keep improving, what a great scene we'll have overall.